All right, I'd like to call to order the Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole, Tuesday, November 12th at 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Maxwell. Here. McGuire. It's here someplace. Michaels. Here. Mitchell. Petrie. Here. Quisenberry. Here. Richards.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Schrader.
Here.
Schwartz. Here. Alex. Berkson. Here. Carter. Here. Coert. Esri.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Hartke.
Here.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Kibler.
Here.
Langenheim. Kurtz.
Here. We have a quorum. I'd like a motion for approval of the minutes of Finance Committee Whole, October 1st, 2013. Mr. Rosales and Mr. Carter, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like a motion for approval of the agenda and addenda. I have Mr. James, a second. I have Ms. Berkson. Are there any changes? Ms. Berkson.
I'd like to remove 7A.
7A, the report on pretrial services pilot program being pulled. Thank you. Chair of Justice has pulled report on pretrial services pilot program. Mr. Alex.
I'd like to add a brief discussion of the nursing home after the auditor's report, and I would like to pull F3, which is draft changes to the draft budget.
I'm sorry, F3
Yes, sir.
of Finance. F3 is pulled from the budget by the Chair of Finance. And I'm sorry, what, the nursing home?
I'd like to have a brief discussion of the nursing home between the auditor's report and budget amendments and transfers.
Okay.
I would note that the pulling of the budget change recommendation item is because we have no proposed changes to the draft budget at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. All right, are there any other changes or addendum? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public participation. Let me get, there they are, okay. All right, ground rules, simple, 5 minutes per participant with an hour time limit on our public participation. I'd like to start with Ms. Charlotte Green, please. Just press the button on the front of your microphone, bottom button down in the front.
Okay.
That's it. Bring it over to you, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I wanted to just speak to,
Name and address, please.
Charlotte Green, and I'm 606 North Willis, Champaign. And I just wanted to speak to the issue about the pretrial services. It's very disappointing to read in the paper the recommendations to kind of ditch the pretrial services program. It seems to me that 5 weeks is not a very long time at all to test a program. It seems like, after reading Dr. Kalmanoff's report, the program involved hiring new staff, training the staff, and doing some new procedures. And it seems to me it takes a while just to get a program off the ground, and that you can't really come to any conclusion about a new program after such a short period of time. And I guess it makes me wonder because it seemed that a research-based model was recommended by Dr. Kalmanoff, and I assume that this is the model that was implemented. So I'm wondering why it wasn't tried for longer than 5 weeks, seeing that this was researched by a much bigger study than 238 prisoners. The other thing that he suggested, Dr. Kalmanoff suggested, that I thought is a very reasonable thing, is to bring in experts from the University of Illinois to validate, you know, their test or their trial period. And I'm not an expert on research, but validation to me means that if somebody else comes in and does the same thing, they get the same results. And I think that's very, very important in this case. So, and I guess my second point is that even if this pretrial services model, maybe we're already doing that, and maybe the people in charge have very good judgment, and that's great, but how do we know the next people that take their place have that same good judgment? And along with that is just the idea of transparency. I think we need something that you do the same thing over and over and over again, something that people can see. Because in this community we have, as everybody knows, there's a disproportionate amount of African Americans in the jail, and nobody really knows the reason for that, but we need to do things on a fair and equal way, a transparent way, so that the community can't come and say, you know, this is not fair, this very beginning process is not fair. Maybe it's being done fair, but they need to see it. It needs to be transparent and consistent. So, thank you very much.
Mr. William Sullivan?
Good evening. I'm William Sullivan from 1804 Pleasant in Urbana, and I'm a member of or I was a member of the Community Justice Task Force. And I've come to just address the same issue and express my concern about the letter from Judge DeFanis, and just tell you, as a research scientist and a person that's involved in assessments every single day, I'm curious about why we got such dramatic differences in this 5-week-long study compared to what the research from many, many, many counties has found. And it makes me curious when I'm working with my own graduate students or even my undergraduates, and they come up with findings that are distinctly different from what's been published in the scientific literature. I have a series of questions for them. I asked them, why did they think this is different? What's unique about this condition compared to the other conditions in which the findings were positive? And I expect them to be able to tell me. I also asked them what was different about the evaluation procedures that were used here compared to the evaluation procedures that were used in the findings that were published in the literature. And I expect them to be able to tell me that. And it's through a discussion and it's through a sense of curiosity about answering these questions that we come to understand why there were actual differences. I read the memo from the judge, and I can't answer any of those questions for you. And because I can't answer those questions for you, I'm left wondering what's going on here, and I'm thinking probably more investigation is appropriate. I think it's wonderful that the judge and his colleagues have decided that they want to do some evidence-based policymaking here. I'm all for that. I think evidence-based policymaking is a great, great thing. Let's actually do that. Let's have a comprehensive study about these things, because the research literature is very clear. When we engage in pretrial services like this, we incarcerate fewer people, we cost the county less money, and we have a healthier community as a result from multiple measures. So those are the questions I have for you tonight. It grows out a sense of curiosity about why our particular findings are so different, and my suggestion is let's explore this further before we make any decisions. Thanks for your time tonight. Good evening.
Thank you. Mr. James Kilgore.
Good evening, James Kilgore, 511 South Draper, Champaign. I'm going to reiterate some of the things that the previous speakers have said. Certainly their sympathies, and maybe add a couple of points. But I think One of the questions that I had in response to this study is, who was told that this study was going to happen? One of the things about doing a pilot is that you kind of declare at the beginning, well, we're going to do a pilot. It's going to go on for X period of time, and at the end of that period of time, we're looking to have the following outcomes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you carry out your pilot, and at the end of that period of time, you compare your outcomes to what you were hoping to get. And, you know, you have these key performance indicators, like some of the things that some people like to talk about. Well, that seems to be all backwards in this particular instance, because we haven't had this is a public policy issue, but we haven't had any transparency in terms of the fact that this study is being done. And then the question becomes, A, who should be doing such a study, which other people have spoken to. We have the reason why we had a ILPP and a task force is to have people who were outside the system to evaluate these things. So we have recommendations from ILPP and recommendations from the task force. And I don't speak for the task force, but as a member of the task force, and recognizing in particular we have a very highly skilled expert on pretrial services, Lynn Branham, on the task force. And what she came up with, and what Dr. Kalmanoff, who is also very expert in pretrial services, came up with, were very, very different from this study. So I think that I think the reason you brought in outside people to do that was precisely to be able to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the criminal justice system. So the question then, the final question that I have is, and I think it's something that has been raised here before, is that we can't expect instant results. In criminal justice, the only thing you can change in 5 weeks is the wallpaper. You're not going to change practice institutions that have been in place for a long time. But at the same time, when things like this happen, the question that I would ask is, I think there's some personal and some political pushback. People don't like change, people resist change, and people find ways to resist that change. And I think we have to look past this. I'm hoping we can bring the players in this study back on board to this process, and I think it's excellent that the county board has looked at this closely, has decided to continue funding the pretrial services, and to look for a way to make this happen according to the recommendations of the ILPP and the Community Justice Task Force. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Aarons?
Good evening, Aaron Ammons, and I just came to say how y'all doing. I really don't have anything to say tonight. Seriously, that was really about where I am, because I do think it's important to have everyone involved who's involved in the process to be present so we can have a conversation. And so I was involved in a class today that asked a group of people to walk a mile in somebody else's moccasins. And I remember a long time ago dealing with the jail phone contract, and when Barb Wysocki was still on the board, and she was about tired of us badgering her. And I said, Barb, I recognize that you have a life outside of here, that there's a lot demanded of you as a county board official, and I just wanted to appeal to her in a very human way, and she really appreciated that. So I don't want to badger the county board here or any of the members, Democrat, Republican, whatever. What I'm saying is that I should speak for myself, but I do think I speak for a larger group of people, that we really felt like there was movement towards looking at criminal justice and looking at some of the issues that we were facing here in a different way. And it's certainly disheartening, to say the least, to see this happen the way that it has to the pretrial services. So you guys, we feel like, did the right thing. You were supportive to spend the money, to put the money up, and it's much appreciated. We really feel like we were moving in that direction. So it would be, I'm certainly interested in sitting down and having a conversation with some of the other stakeholders whenever they return my emails or something like that, right? So, but we still look forward to this progress and to this process moving forward, and hopefully that we can actually resolve it and get things back on track. So thank y'all for your time.
Thank you. Ryan Roth? I'm sorry? Can I speak at the time of the bill?
Good evening. My name is Ryan Roth. I'm the Public Policy Director for the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce. Probably most of you have read the email that I sent out that included the Chamber's position and some recommendations that we have made regarding the health inspection placards, proposed health inspection placards to be posted in restaurants and food service places. That letter was the result of a meeting between, or our recommendations rather, were the result of a meeting between Chamber members and Mr. Jim Roberts and Chamber staff last week, in which basically we got together and there were a series of several questions asked, and at the time there were some unanswered questions, and I know a couple of you pointed out that there's a sentence in there said something along the lines of a rush to, not necessarily a rush to judgment, but that we were, basically it had been rushed along, and some of you said that it had been a couple of years, been working on this for a couple of years, which we realize that, but there still are some questions like, you know, where are these cards supposed to be posted? You know, there seems, we want to keep a fairness between places that have multiple entrances, places that have one entrance, and then places that have, that are strictly catering. You know, is the caterer supposed to go to the wedding and have the placard, you know, taped right at the food line? Also, there doesn't necessarily appear to be a clear-cut appeals process written into the proposal. What we're afraid of is places that have the yellow placard. They, you know, call the health department and they say, you know, we're ready for our inspection, but because of restraints on basically schedules, because, you know, inspectors aren't able to get there within, say, 2 weeks, that those people, even though they may be able to pass the inspection at the time that they call the health department, it's another 2 weeks, and that can hurt their business. And we do realize that there have been a number of public meetings about this proposal. However, we have heard from several of our members that they were afraid to say much publicly, more or less for fear of damaging the relationship that they have with some of their inspectors. And one of the recommendations that we made was that there be a year's time to do an education campaign, because one of the things that came out of this meeting was that some of our members were fearful that people would see the categories listed on the cards, and while it may be a minor infraction, if you're going into a business and you see one of the categories listed in which, you know, marked on the door, your mind will automatically go to the worst case scenario. These fears were further heightened when during the meeting we were told basically that there wasn't a budget to do an education campaign for the public. Finally, I do like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak before you this evening. You know, if on this or any other issue the Chamber is able to help, we're more than willing to. If any of you would like to meet with any of our members on this or any other issue, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Nilufar Shambiati?
Good evening. Thank you again for this opportunity. I was terribly shocked when I read this terribly flawed report that was given to you, to everyone here, and to the public. And it seems to me that it's even elementary school experiments or science experiments take more than 5 weeks to come up with results that is scientific and acceptable. And when we are dealing with such a major reform attempts, this is completely unacceptable. And first of all, I just want to go back to the criticism that I had even towards Dr. Kalmanoff's report and recommendations when he welcomed the committee that was formed by the usual gatekeepers, the sheriff office, the state attorney, etc., and excluded the possibility of having professionals from the community, not everyone, but professionals, those who have experience and the skills in pretrial complications that may arise or mental health treatment options, etc. And I knew that this would run into problem, but not as quickly as it did. And so, first of all, what I want to say is that we cannot allow these decisions to be made behind the closed doors when 3 or 4 people get together and make decisions, especially when these are the same people who have been making these decisions. New blood is required in order to bring some momentum to this reform attempt. And then the duration is just ridiculous. The duration of the pilot program, as it was mentioned before, no transparency. And then the Virginia risk assessment tools apparently was picked. I wanted to know, and I'm sure you also wanted to know, whether there been other risk assessment tools and instruments that this committee had looked at and then decided to pick this one. And I have issues with having 7 days in jail before the assessment, risk assessment is done, because I feel like this is also some waste of county's money. And then also, I guess, as one important element of a pre-trial program or assessment is that someone who has some specialty in diagnosis mental health problems has to be present at a time of arraignment, and this is something that is done in other successful pretrial programs. Several officers are trained into this type of diagnosis, and they always go to the place when an offense has taken place. And this, I don't see any indication that this has been done during this period, pilot period. And another thing is that parole officers had been assigned to do these risk assessments. And I'm sure that this was like over time because they have other responsibilities. But what is supposed to happen is that special officers have to be assigned for doing these risk assessments, not the parole officers during their overtime. And another thing is that even if we accept the Virginia assessment tools as valid and as serving our county well, there is a period of training that the officers have to go through before they can start to implement it. And I don't see that happening.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Well, I am done too, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in public participation this evening? Seeing none, I'm closing public participation and moving on to communications. Is there any communications, Mr. Kibler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to make aware of an event that's happening in mid-January, excuse me, the Dr. Martin Luther King countywide celebration that this county board has been assisting with funding for several years now. The celebration this year will feature Cheryl Brown Henderson, the daughter of the late Oliver L. Brown, who's part of Brown versus Board of Education. So really dynamic, great speaker that we have this year. So please mark your calendars down for January 17th from 4 to 5 p.m. Thank you.
Lynn Branham couldn't be here tonight, but she sent me a note to pass on to everybody, so I'll try to skim part of it. It also concerns the pretrial services. She wants everybody to know that what was discussed in the memorandum to the county board was not a, quote, pretrial services program. Perhaps what is most disconcerting about the information relayed to the county board is it did not concern a pretrial services program. Certainly not a best practices pretrial services program, as those terms are widely understood by national experts on pretrial services. First, note that most of the people detained in jail at the time of their arraignment during this purported pilot project, 183 of 238 in custody at the time of the arraignment, remained in jail after the arraignment. At these arraignments, release-related decisions were made that were uninformed by the gathering and verification of the information for which ILPP is called. The screening deficiency leads to unnecessary incarceration, jeopardizes the public safety. Second, only about a third of these 183 individuals who remained in jail were able to post bond within 24 hours of the arraignment. Oddly, this statistic is proffered as evidence that this pretrial services program is not needed in the county. To the contrary, the memorandum discounts the cumulative impact of the short periods of incarceration have on the number of jail beds needed in a jail. In addition to the tidbits of information shared in the memo sent to the county board confirm an unsettling reality. Champaign County remains a county in which pretrial release, in significant part, hinges on the posting of bond, not as it should be on prompt risk assessments using assessment tools which have been validated in this county. Third, the memorandum fails to mention or evince an understanding of the supervision function of which the ILPP report refers to as a, quote, real best practices pretrial justice program. And the expedited processing of some cases by a few select criminal justice officials was not a pilot. If anyone on the county board were inclined to give any weight to this information described as the outgrowth of a pilot project, I would suggest the following. Locate an expert on pretrial services who, probably for a nominal fee, can point out in full detail why the experiment has no empirical validity. And I will email this to everybody in full so you can see it yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Any other communication? I have one. This evening, prior to this board meeting, the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District Board tonight voted unanimously for the inspection placard program. I just wanted to inform you of that so that you have that on the record for this evening's CAL meeting. Any other communication at this time? Thank you. Ms. Berkson, would you take justice, please?
Okay, we need a motion to request the release for the RFP. Any discussion? Patsy?
Yes. I move that this request for the RFP for the reentry program be tabled until the CAL during the month of December.
Yeah.
May I speak to my motion, please?
All right. What is, does a postponement take precedence over the motion on the floor?
You have to debate, yes.
Yes, okay, good enough. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. The reasons for my asking for the tabling of this motion for 30 days is not because I do not support such a program. I do highly, and it's because I support this program that I have the following concerns. I did not get my packet until Saturday. Monday was a holiday, and today is Tuesday, and I was in Bloomington all day today, not leaving much time to touch with people who are experts on this kind of program so that I know that the RFP will result in proposals that will help us develop the best of all best reentry programs. And I think it would behoove all of us to take a little time to make certain that the proposal is well written. We all know that we can write proposals so we get results that are not the best of all results. I could write a syllabus for any course I was teaching that would guarantee certain students would never think of taking my course, and it would never be considered discriminatory because of the way I wrote the syllabus. So we all know this can happen, and I would like us to have 100% success on a reentry program, and hope that there is support for us to give all of us 30 days to study this a bit more and to consult with people who are far more acquainted with these kind of programs. We've never been in this area of interest previously, and most of us don't come to the table with a great deal of expertise.
Great.
Ms. Bergson, if I could offer a clarification, I think Ms. Petrie meant to defer till December, not table, because table you basically would kill it. So would that be correct, Ms. Petrie?
Thank you very much for the
Okay.
correction.
Thank you. Yes?
Well, I understand Patsy's concerns, and I understand that sometimes the mail is a little bit slow. Reading through that, and of course, I probably don't understand all the bigger words that Patsy has a grasp on. But I'm sure when staff looks at this, and the people that put it together have done their due diligence based on, you know, what's out there, it's an RFP. It's not something that we have to pick and choose every little word, because I find in life you can have the best written document you ever thought you had, and somebody's going to find a way, just like you say with your syllabus, to throw something off course. We spend a lot of time sometimes rehashing this. An RFP, to me, based on this document, they'll come back, and if we don't like what's being offered, based on what's being put before them, we can say no. It's the will of this board, but it looks like a fine document to me at this point.
Al?
Yeah, I have to agree with Stan. This was done in conjunction with the Justice Chair, myself, and Ms. Busey, and the staff who have written numerous RFPs. I think this hits exactly what we want. We want this reentry program to move forward. If Ms. Petrie needs more time, we have another week that she can bring to the board any of her changes. Oh, is this going to be the? Oh, it really, okay, this is actually just a release for the committee. I'm sorry.
Once the committee approves the release of the RFP, it goes out. It does
Okay.
not go to the county board.
Thank you. Well, I would support the RFP to go out, and let's find someone who can apply for this reentry program. Thank you.
Yeah?
I would agree. I think we wanted a reentry program. Now we have something in front of us that they can work with, and let's get started. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, Lloyd?
You know, it seemed to us in the most, some of us seem to think that imposing something on somebody else is no big deal. But when you make laws, you're supposed to, if you're American, like, you're supposed to make laws to suit everybody. And to me, we are getting away from that. we coming up with ideas that nobody else know about but a certain little few, and want to push them over on everybody else. To me, that is disrespectful. And you ask for a little time, it's always, well, we don't have time. We got to rush through this. Where you going? My grandparents always told me, if you start out right, it'll end right. But you start out wrong, it's going to end wrong. So that's why we have to rehash all this stuff, because we don't start out right. And what is more decent to have the people that you're supposed to be governing their laws to have a say. That's what democracy is about. Everybody understands what being opposed on. And I just would say, why don't we just take a step back here and let the process be done right in all the fashion? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. I think that Ms. Petrie's request is quite reasonable, given the time to spend a little bit more time on this, just to think it through. I know that it sounds like you have a number of questions you'd like to bring forth, and I think it'd be advantageous to, if we voted no for this amendment, that it would cause a lot of extra consternation right after. So I'd rather see us try to work through this and then come up with our best solution that we can come out with in December. And secondly, I think a lot of the public would continue to appreciate our due diligence in making sure that what we're doing is appropriate and we're asking for the right things, because this is a lot of money that we're working with. So I will support your motion.
Rachel?
I know we're only talking about deferral now, but I have a specific question about the RFP. So if we vote to defer it, can we then still talk about the RFP, or would it be dead? Okay, so I know that this is not exactly what we're talking about. I will say what I have to say anyway. I'm not sure why the RFP specifies that we need a re-entry council, and specifically my concern is it says that it's about justice system leaders. We've just seen an example of a pre-trial system that was supposed to work and got shut down by the justice system leaders. So I'm not sure that I want the justice system leaders to be in charge of re-entry. So if this is an inherent part of the RFP, we need to talk about it. But if we're deferring it, I'm not sure when we're going to talk about it.
We'll have to talk about it in December if we defer it. Chris?
I have to agree with Ms. Petrie, Mr. Kibler, and Mr. Carter on this. I think, I had a chance to look at the RFP before it got to the rest of the board. I think it looks fine. I'm excited about moving forward with this program, but it's clear that there are board members who aren't completely comfortable with the RFP yet. I would hope that if this is deferred, and I will support deferral, I would hope that if this is deferred, board members can make their concerns known to Ms. Busey and the others on the board in the meantime, so that we don't, take this up cold in December. If we're going to have an extra month, we ought to use that extra month.
Josh?
I guess kind of everybody has said what I meant to say. My concerns come from how quickly pretrial was bailed on. I'd hate for this system to also be, not that I'm accusing anyone of anything, but set up for failure by rushing around to get to it, kind of like pretrial was, and then maybe the wrong program being chosen, and then we call it failure too quickly. So I'm with Patsy, but I do hope that members who have concerns have real concrete things that they want to bring to this RFP, so that we aren't wasting our 30 days.
Ralph?
Roll call vote, please. Sure. Second.
Okay, anyone else want to speak to it? Now we're voting on deferring it.
Yeah. I know we're having this discussion about this program and what staff has brought to us after obviously some time bringing this together, and we expect them to do this stuff, and we're talking about spending some more time waiting. But I don't know that I've heard any issue that anybody's brought up against this RFP. I mean, if you could have gone on the website to read it, you could have read it up until now. But those are just my points. Why should we continue to wait and put this off? Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, roll call vote.
No vote.
And this is a vote to defer. No says we don't, and yes says we defer till December.
Maxwell? Yes. McGuire? No. Michaels?
Yes.
Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Carter?
No.
Cowart? Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz?
No.
Langenheim? Bergson?
No. So that is deferred. And then move to accept the monthly reports.
So moved, place on file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
That does justice.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to finance. Mr. Alex, take the chair, please. Oh, that's mine. Okay, Chris, go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is the treasurer. We have his monthly report.
Those yellow sneakers, I like those, Dan.
Nice kicks.
Nice.
I do not lose them.
What
Good to know.
What do you have to tell us about your report?
Thank you. My report's on my website, but a couple items I want to talk about briefly. Repaid the $1 million loan from Public Safety to General Corp. Paid that loan back on October the 22nd. And then I want to give you a little update on the end of the real estate tax season. We had a tax sale October 25th. This year we had only 886 properties that went to the tax sale. That's 395 less than last year. We had 1,241. Our average bid for at the tax sale was 2.40. It could be as high as 18%. So 2.4 was very good. We collected over $290 million. And of that, we did not collect about 203,000. So 99.93% was the final total collection. So what didn't we collect? Some bankruptcies, some leaseholds, and then there were about 81 properties that were not actually sold. So a good tax sale. So I'd ask that my report be accepted and placed on file, please.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kibler, seconded by Mr. Hartke. Is there any discussion or additional questions for the treasurer? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Two mobile home resolutions. We've done these several times in the last several months. Mobile homes that went to tax sale were not purchased. Redemption period of 2.5 years expired without any redemption. These were offered at a closed sealed bid auction, and they were purchased for the minimum bid. We're just getting these people, transferring the title back to the new owners and getting them back on the tax rolls.
May I have an omnibus motion to approve these two items? I see Ms. Michaels and Ms. Cowart. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll send
Thank
those
you.
along. Thank you, sir. Mr. Auditor. Starting out with the monthly report.
My monthly report's available on the website. Highlight for you, general corporate fund revenues are coming in slightly higher than expenditures, which is what we always like to see. So I just would ask that you accept that and place on file.
May I have a motion? I saw Mr. Hartke, second. Mr. Kibler, any discussion or questions for the auditor? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll place those on file. Now on to the audit.
The audit, I sent to all of you a brief summary of the audit. I'd be glad to go over that summary with you if you've all reviewed it and just would like to go to questions. I'm okay with that as well. Ms. Ramsey is also here to answer specifics about individual fund statements if you have questions along those lines.
I recognize Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. First, John, I want to thank you for this summary. It takes 200-300 pages and sort of brings it down to us. So I want to thank you and Ms. Ramsey at my request to have this done. I noticed from the report that ostensibly we're in good shape. The audit shows a couple of small, and what I call minor findings concerning one or two line items when we have hundreds of line items and we have a multi-million-dollar budget. So I feel that this was helpful in explaining those findings and that the auditor felt we had the best practices. So thank you for that.
Well, and I would say along those lines, that's a testament to the purchasing policy and the travel policy that this board has adopted. The departments, by and large, follow those policies. We enforce them, and that makes things fairly clean for the auditors to go through and review. The one finding in the Access Initiative, that's 2 years that they've had that same finding. We've spoken with the Mental Health Board, who ultimately is the overseer of the Access Initiative, and talked with them. And as that program continues to wind down, as their grant runs out over the next 2 years, they will be expending less and less, and so hopefully this will not be a problem in the future. Quite honestly, it's just a matter of timeliness, getting their credit card bills turned in to get paid on time.
Thank you. Ms. Petrie?
Thank you very much. You addressed part of what I wanted to ask you about, the single audit and the Access Initiative, and wondered if you might, when you report to us, say in 5 or 6 months, give us an update of progress and how they're going to tighten up their reporting period to you. You've done such a good job with the other.
As I say, the bad purchases list is a great example of, and that's where those would show up.
Yes, I have great faith that you'll accomplish the same with Access Initiative.
We have implemented some new policies within the office with the departments to, when they have showed up on the bad purchases list 3 times during a fiscal year, they get a nice stern letter from me, and I had 3 department heads who were not happy with me. How dare I call them out on it? But it's just it's the right thing to do, and so that seems to be getting people's attention. And the list I just got right before I left this afternoon, got the bad purchases list that'll be on your agenda next week, and it was down to 4 items, I believe.
Congratulations,
so,
and thank you very much.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Farney. Ms. Michaels?
I just have a quick question here. I noticed that one of the items was documenting and testing disaster recovery plan. I'm sure you have something. Is this that they're wanting more in what we already have?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not like we're out there with nothing in place. We have backups, and really Andy Rhodes in the IT department would be a better expert to explain that to you. I know that things are backed up off-site and things, so we have ways of doing that, but there are more modern practices, I think, would probably be the best way to describe it, and that's what the outside auditors would like us to be looking at.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, and to follow that up, I'd like to point out that that's not an auditor problem, that's a county problem.
Right.
All of the county departments are dependent on these systems, and so a failure of a catastrophic nature would put all of them in a difficult place. And I want to read from the recommendation on the last page. The county should consider updating its financial system and reviewing all related security settings at the system and financial application levels. If you look through these findings on the IT area, they talk about a lack of security, mostly based on the age of this system and the capabilities associated with it. A lack, and that is both with user security and with development security. And I'll explain what that means. That means that someone working on the code can make code to do things that you might not want it to do, as far as maybe hiding expenses or hiding transactions or doing things like that, because the system is not capable of tracking those kinds of changes, those kinds of manipulations. there are examples I could tell you about where that has happened, where someone writing the code, and I'm not saying any of our staff are in this area, but because of the lack of those controls, people have been able to write code that hides theft of funds.
The
for one
movie
thing.
Office Space comes to mind immediately.
So,
Where they wrote
yeah,
the
yeah,
code to
that's
steal
a
the
good
tenth
example.
of a penny off of everything.
But anyway, this board has to recognize, I think when we brought up the idea of maybe investing in a new financial system, it was pretty much sent packing forthright. I think we did that too quickly. I think we have to stand up to this. We're doing a good job of taking care of some of our neglect on the fiscal or on the facility side by starting to put some money back to fix our buildings that we haven't been fixing. But our IT systems are part of our infrastructure too. So when we come talking about that again, I want you to keep this in your mind. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else for the first time? No, I'll go to Ms. Petrie.
I'd like to grab the opportunity of what Mr. Quisenberry just spoke about and suggest that this conversation be an item during our January meeting so we can start getting a better handle about it and the appropriate people who can help us wrap our heads around it with a little bit more depth be included in that conversation. Thanks.
Thank you for the comment. Any others? Mr. Quisenberry, back to you.
And I'll add one more follow-up to this. This is what a financial auditor has to say about our systems. If we brought in a technology auditor and they're available and they're out there, we would get a much more detailed report and specifics about what we should do. I think Clifton Larson Allen actually has that capability to bring that resource to bear if we wanted to work with them, but there are definitely others that could help us with this.
Thank you, Ms. Petrie. Ms. Berkson.
How many IT systems do we run? I notice we have a 3-year renewal on some other management system, Juno or something, and
Deb,
if we're going to take it apart, should they be integrated, or should we at least look at that?
Deb, do you want to tackle that? I'm not sure that's within the expertise of anybody on the board right now.
We do have both JANO and New World software systems, which is for the criminal justice system. So that is the software that manages and operates all of the offices within the criminal justice system. We have Kronos, which is our payroll accounting software. The nursing home utilizes software, and then there are smaller software packages used or which have been developed throughout various county offices. For example, the county clerk has a number of programs that have been developed. The accounting system touches almost all of those. So those systems have been forced to integrate with our accounting system, and certainly when we look at a new accounting system, we have to look at all of that utilization and how integration with our existing systems would be developed and would work. So it all interrelates.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on the audit?
If I may
Mr.
make
Auditor.
one more comment, touching on Mr. Quisenberry's points. Since we received the findings of the audit, we have spoken quite a bit with IT, and several of these items we hope to have fixes for. I know the password issue is going to be brought up almost immediately. So several of these things we're going to be addressing during January. The things that we can address that are not going to be at a great expense to the county. The things that we can take care of, and he has the capability amongst his staff there in IT, we're going to get those addressed. And in addition to that, we've added some more user-friendly items to the system just in the last 45 days. And so there are some positive things coming forward, and the IT department is working with us and with Ms. Busey's office. And in fact, we're having a meeting tomorrow about that to kind of go over some things. So there are some, we're addressing some of these issues as best we can right now.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you and Ms. Ramsey. I mean, this has been the first time through this process for both of you, and I think it's gone surprisingly well.
We actually have a meeting with Clifton Larson Allen tomorrow to start next year's process.
All right, early and often. If there are no more comments or questions, may I have a motion to accept the 2012 CAFR and audit and place on file? Moved by Ms. Michaels, seconded by Mr. James. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. As I said at the beginning, when we asked to change the agenda, I did want to have a brief opportunity for Mr. Maxwell and or Mr. Hartke to talk about the state of the nursing home. I know that the Nursing Home Board of Directors did not meet in October for lack of quorum, and because of the holiday, the nursing home meeting for this month is actually next week as opposed to last week. So there hasn't really been a meeting on which to report, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak if you had anything to say. Mr. Maxwell, anything?
We did receive a report from Scott Hema dated November 1, and basically reported on the September and to some degree October goings on at the nursing home. The cash operations in September was a negative 97.47. This was due largely to a great number of conversion days that we incurred at the home, over 900. And what a conversion day is, that's where somebody comes in, private pay, but the process, eventually they will become Medicaid. The state has been taking longer and longer to get these folks approved and on Medicaid. And in this one particular case, it was over a year. So finally, when those conversion days were made, they basically go on Medicaid, and the state reimburses for that past year that one individual was on. So that was part of the problem. It also sent our payer mix, it kind of distorted the payer mix by days in September, so that Medicaid actually was about 65%, private was about 28%, and Medicare was 7.5 or 8, thereabouts. Cash is expected to fall to about $389,000 by the end of this month, but we'll rebound with the sale of the tax anticipation warrants early in December. Admissions in October, through October for the fiscal year 13, we're averaging about 25.7 per month, and our discharges and expirations were averaging about 19.5 per month. We did receive our latest inspection from the kitchen, and the score was the same as the April inspection. So we've not made any great improvements, but we've not fallen back either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Just a couple of questions. Can you get those numbers out to the board? Is that something that can be emailed out? I don't think we've seen those numbers from Mr. Gima.
Yes, I can do that. I had planned to put all those into the report after the November 18th meeting and get to you in time for the full board meeting.
Okay, that's fine, because we're going to get the quarterly report next week, right?
I believe so,
The quarterly
yes.
reports with the November board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then other question, how are we doing on census?
The census at the end of, as of November 1st, I do have that figure. It seemed to me it was running the November 1st census was about 195.
Okay, and just to clarify something you said earlier, you said that the payer mix was distorted. That's because there are sort of retroactive Medicaid days that are reflected in that. In other words, a year's worth of days that got attributed to this month?
Actually 900, but
okay.
Of that, about half of those days were one individual. So that represents that he was in the home for over a year, and we received no pay at all.
Okay, so there are days that we got paid for, but days that weren't actually in this last month.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I thought that's what you said. Any additional questions or comments regarding the nursing home? I appreciate everybody having this conversation. Seeing none, let's move on to budget amendments and transfers. The first item is Budget Amendment 13-54. So $66,000 to the health and life insurance and employee group insurance. May I have a motion to forward this to the full board with a recommendation for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kurtz, second by Mr. Langenheim. Discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 2 is Budget Amendment 13-55. This is increased appropriations from the fund balance of $11,000 for the state's attorney's office to pay for current fiscal year expenses related to the Carl property tax case started in 2008. May I have a motion to send this to the full board? Moved by Mr. James, second by Mr. Esri. Questions, discussion, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And moving on to item 3, Budget Amendment 13-56. This is $35,260 in increased appropriations from the fund balance for the coroner, and we'll let the coroner speak to that.
Good evening. I heard there was 2 or 3 questions at the beginning of the meeting, so I figured out I wasn't quite clear, I guess, in the amendment. I tried to summarize with that letter. When I started to type it out for you, I could see it was going to be about a 3-page letter, so I tried to cut it short, but I think I was more confusing than helpful. Basically, what I'd like to clarify is the morgue itself. I had a question this evening before the meeting about, that someone thought the morgue was generating revenue, and my budget amendment says I'm asking for an increase in appropriations, and there's no increase in revenue. The reason I did that is because this is strictly about autopsies that I am doing that are Champaign County cases, and when we do autopsies, that doesn't generate revenue for us. That's an expense for us. Now, when I do autopsies in our facility, I save money because I don't pay a facility fee to another facility. And I actually, up until September 1st, I have to give you a little background. The pathologist who I was using to do our autopsies was traveling here to Champaign County, and there was 2 pathologists, and they actually cover 2 other counties, McLean County and Peoria County. They work out of those morgues as well. Unfortunately, the National Medical Examiners Association recommends that a pathologist do no more than approximately 250 to 300 autopsies a year because they think that if they do more than that, there's more potential for them to make mistakes. So the pathologists we were using were each doing over 500 cases apiece. So out of these 3 morgues, they made the decision, McLean County and traveling to Peoria County. One of the pathologists lives in McLean County. It's 30 minutes to Peoria. It's an hour drive here. In a round trip to Champaign and back, they can do 1.5 autopsies and not be traveling. So unfortunately, out of the 3 morgues, we got cut out of the deal because it was more time consuming and expensive for them. And we were actually one of the larger counties that they were covering as well. So that helped reduce their caseload. So in July, I got approximately 6 weeks' notice that I needed to find a new pathologist. So unfortunately, that's pretty hard to do. Sangamon County has been searching for a pathologist for over 9 months. They're just in the process. They hired a person. He's due to start any day now or within the next few weeks. I was under the situation where as of September 1st, I was without a pathologist. Fortunately, I hired a pathologist who is going to move to Champaign County and work out of our facility and help cover, which is a really great thing for us. And with help from Mr. Kurtz and Mr. Richards and several other elected officials I contacted, we were able to get his medical license, pushed through a little quicker and not wait quite as long for the paperwork trail. So he's actually here and ready to start any day now. But what happened is from September 1st till now, but especially till October 31st, I was without a pathologist, so I had to go back to traveling to another county to utilize their pathologist to get my autopsies done. So up until October 31st, or up until September 1st, the autopsies we did in Champaign County actually saved us over $26,000 in fees up until that point. Then came that point, I had to travel, I had to start paying a fee to other counties, which increased my expenses, and likewise, my Champaign County cases that I had to do increased exponentially. In October, we did 18. We averaged 10 to 12 a month. We did 18 alone in October. So I have no way of knowing how many are going to happen in a certain month, and it just was kind of a double effect. I lost my pathologist, had to start traveling, and I had an excessively high number of cases in one of those months. I believe I had 12 and I had a total of 30 in September and October. So that's where I ended up at this. We are generating, when we do autopsies in the facility for other counties, we generate a fee revenue from those other counties. but not having a pathologist caused us for 2 months not to have any autopsies in our facility. Now, we still had some tissue procurements from tissue agencies where we generated a little bit of revenue, but whenever we do an autopsy for Champaign County, we don't generate any money off of that. It's just the money I save by not traveling somewhere else. So when I asked for the budget amendment, there's no revenue to offset that. That's purely expense for my office just on our autopsies itself. And hopefully that clears it up a little bit. That fee as well, that's toxicology and autopsies. There's a chance I won't spend all that because we're getting down to the last month. That's just my estimate based off of the other 11 months leading up to this point and to get me through the ones that I still owe on that we've already done and the ones that we're going to do here in November. That's that total fee. So I hope that clears it up a little bit for everyone.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Schrader?
Mr. Alex, for discussion purposes, I'll move that motion.
Thank you, sir. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kurtz. Thanks for catching me on that. Any discussion or questions of the coroner? Mr. Maxwell.
I have a question. I'm not sure it's timely, but my question would be, does the FY15 budget, is it going to be adequate, do you think?
As of right now, I believe so. When I did the fiscal, or you're talking about the fiscal year 14 for next year? Yes. Yeah, the fiscal year 13, I budgeted. I usually go back and look at several years' numbers. When I budgeted this year, I've said for many years we averaged 10 to 12 Champaign County autopsies a month. I went back and looked at the prior 3 years, 12, 11, and 10. We were averaging closer to 10 a month. So I kind of bumped it down for this year thinking, I kind of took a gamble and said, we've been down for 3 years. I think we can squeak through. Unfortunately, the numbers for this year shot up and we were averaging at least 12 or more a month on average. So, it was a gamble I took on the last 3 years. So I don't believe, I can't say for sure, but we've budgeted, I think, appropriately for next year, but I really couldn't say. I mean, I think we'll be close next year, but it's kind of a guess every year.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Northrup? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That concludes our budget amendments and transfers. Our next item is D1, a resolution to designate the state's attorney's appellate prosecutor as the agent for appellate cases for the state's attorney. May I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Esri, seconded by Mr. Hartke. Discussions, the state's attorney is teaching and cannot be here tonight. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item E, this is a request for approval of the program maintenance agreement with Jano Technologies for the justice system software. I may have a motion. Moved by Mr. McGuire, seconded by Ms. Berkson. Any comments, questions about this contract? Ms. Schwartz.
Yeah, I thought your email suggested that the terms are identical. It seemed like the price went up, or maybe I'm not reading it right, so.
I'm gonna let Ms. Busey take that.
And I
It
didn't
went
do
up,
that.
so it did go up somewhat.
It's like a CPI adjustment, and it adjusts. It has adjusted every year. The typical increase is usually 3%. And I didn't do the math on this one, so I don't know it right off the top of my head, but.
I didn't do the whole math, but the last payment went from 11,000 to 66,000, so that's a little bit more than 3%. Now, maybe that's covering the 3% for the whole amount, so I didn't do that. I didn't figure it out.
There's a timing issue there.
Yeah, the first year is one lump sum payment, which is what we have always done. Oh, I see what you're saying. And then the third year is $11,000. Yeah. I mean, if you want me to get more information on that before the board meeting, I can do that.
Can you, Ms. Busey, can you remind us what happened with the timing of this? I mean, I know we delayed the agreement to let the new circuit clerk get on board.
What we did is we did a one-year contract for this year. The 3-year contract expired last November 30th, but because there was a new circuit clerk coming on, we did a one-year contract. The circuit clerk has done a lot with Jano in this last year. The maintenance agreement here, though, is substantially the same. There were some minor changes made. like that if there's a legal action that the loser doesn't pay the, So there were some minor things like that that were changed, but overall, the justice system officials who used this contract were fine with the way it was worded, so. And I'm sorry, I just didn't calculate the percentage increase.
That's fine.
I think it's about 3.
I can check with Ms. Blakeman, too, on where those numbers came from before the full board meeting. Ms. Petrie?
Yes, just a reminder, is JANO the only company available to do this type of work? And if not, the other companies, was there any sort of bidding process on?
There was a competitive selection process in 2002 when JANA was selected. The implementation of their software was a $2.8 million project, and they are the only vendor who can support their software.
Got it.
So we would have to completely change systems to move to another vendor.
Thank you very much.
On a follow-up to that, have we heard any indication as to the long-term future of JANO? I know there was some concern about change of company ownership.
Yeah, the owner did unexpectedly pass away last December. His son has taken over and seems entirely vetted. The company is fully staffed at this point and seems to be solidly moving forward with supporting all of the counties, and additionally still looking for business with new counties as well. So it seems to be on solid footing at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Busey. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll forward that to the full board, and I'll get with the circuit clerk and try to get some answers on those numbers. Moving on to item F, or section F for the county administrator, we have the general corporate fund fiscal year 2013 budget and budget change reports on our desks.
The projection report is not quite as rosy as it has been in recent months. One substantial change that occurred in October is that if you look about 2/3 the way down the page, general government is projected at a $324,000 shortfall right now. Actually, October, we saw $100,000 less in revenue than we did last October, so that really has an impact on that particular projection. Everything else is fairly consistent. The expenditures may be picking up pace just a little bit. We're to the end of the fiscal year, and I would say that our department heads and officials really focused on not spending their entire budgets in fiscals 11 and 12 because of the financial situation we were in. That may be slightly less likely at this point, but we would still project underspending where we would come in at about 98%, which places us barely positive for the end of the fiscal year, $48,000, which I would basically call, if we land $100,000 either way, of revenue and expenditure, we've basically managed the year with a balanced operation, especially when you consider we took out the $300,000 in cash from the loan to the nursing home out of this year's operating expenses. So that's where the general corporate fund looks right now. It will be interesting as we report the end. I did talk to Ms. Ramsey today. This projection may be a little bit on the revenue side more negative than what it will be, because with the 60-day closeout on the fiscal year, we receive revenues in January from the state that are for November. So we will have an extra potential month of revenue to post on this fiscal year. Of course, we'll be reporting the year end on the fiscal year to you later as well, but that's just something for you to be aware of. And then the budget change report is there for your information.
May I have a motion to accept and place these reports on file? Mr. James, may I have a second? Ms. Berkson, any questions for Ms. Busey? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3 has been removed from the agenda, so we're on to the fiscal year 2014 annual tax levy ordinance and fiscal year 2014 annual budget and appropriation ordinance. Although I see no reason to take these separately, I guess we will for the sake of formality. May I have a motion to approve and forward to the full board for approval the fiscal year 2014 annual tax levy ordinance? Moved by Mr. Hartke, second by Mr. Langenheim? Thank you, sir. Any comments, questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the item 5, may I have a motion to forward the fiscal year 2014 annual budget and appropriation ordinance to the full board with a recommendation for approval? Moved by Mr. Kurtz, seconded by Mr. Hartke. Comments, questions, or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. That motion carries. Finally, item 6, a resolution authorizing the issuance of tax anticipation notes for Champaign County Nursing Home. May I have a motion to forward this to the full board with a recommendation for approval? Mr. Maxwell and Mr. Hartke, our nursing home board members. Discussion?
That gives me confidence to vote.
Ms. Petrie.
Well, again, I ask a question that I've asked previously, and is it imperative that this be done at this point in time, or can it be done later when it is very clear that the nursing home does need this money? And what I'm thinking about is in relationship to the interest that will have to be paid for the length of time we have the money.
Mr. Hartke looks like he wants to take that one.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll turn it
I'll happily take that one. I think as Gary mentioned, with the fact that the cash, our cash level is at 300,000, that's going to fall until we receive our actual tax next year at its specific time. This is the time to start moving this so we can get the sale to happen, do the paperwork, get the sale to happen, get the money in the bank before we start running up against a zero cash flow. So that's my main concern. We are going to need it, but it's going to be paid back the moment we get our taxes in the spring.
Mr. James.
Well, following up on Patsy's, within the audit, not the auditor, our treasurer last spoke to us, he gave us a brief overview of the interest that we've paid per year since this has been going on, and we're up around 36,000 some odd change. I guess I look at this is a tool that we use, and I know the nursing home is at its day, but I think this board as a whole really needs to sit down and think about what we're doing. I mean, we're going out a year ahead to pay bills that are coming in now, and in my mind, we're always a year behind, and if something did occur, that's money that we're going to have to come up with from somewhere, and we keep passing along, and I almost feel like sometimes when I watch government, I think, geez, you know, how do we all run our own houses and our business? If everybody did this, it seemed like we're all just in debt, hoping that next year we're going to pay that debt off. And we need a course of action, and I don't like paying interest. I mean, I really don't like paying interest. I realize it's a necessary evil in some cases, but every year it's the same thing. And I hear Lloyd talk and other people talk, but when it comes to making hard choices, it seems like some of us don't want to sit down and really discuss it. We just want to kick it on down the road, and I think that day's coming. I mean, are we going to let this go on for 15 years, 20 years, or what? So we really need to, as a board, sit down and say, what are our other options?
Thank you, Mr. James. I'm going to go to Mr. Langenheim now. I'll get back to you, Josh.
I'd like to see a roll call vote.
Is that a yes? We got a roll call.
All right, I was just going to say, I think Mr. James has just volunteered to lead the charge for monthly property tax payments in this state, because unless we move to a model where we pay in our property tax on a monthly basis, you can't operate without this kind of tax anticipation model. That's why so many bodies in this state use it for various reasons. You only get your annual payment. If your salary came in June and September, you would be going to the bank saying, I need to borrow money until that comes through, and that's what we're doing. And everybody does it, so it's fine.
Stores take out loans before Christmas. Farmers take out loans. Most businesses do take out seasonal loans. I don't say why theirs are different just because we have a cheap way of doing it instead of taking out the loans from a bank.
I've got Ms. Schwartz next.
Two things. First of all, we don't pay the $36,000. The nursing home does. The second part is the general corp is borrowing about $1.5 million every year from public safety sales tax. I don't see anybody jumping on that. And yes, we're very fortunate that public safety sales tax doesn't charge us interest, but to be fair, maybe we should.
Mr. Kibler, you're next.
Sure. So, man, a lot of things to comment on this one. I'll just keep it simple. I would like to know from the nursing home board what it would take, what cash position we need to be in now in order to be able to sustain ourselves until April, and use that as a goal for the next 3 to 5 years to figure out a way to avoid these in the event that a catastrophe happens or an event happens where we really need the money at that point in time, versus kind of playing our hand now. Let's see let's use it as a reserve or an emergency situation, as opposed to what is being used today, which is kind of keep ops going for the next 4 or 5 months. So I would challenge the nursing home board to come up with what it would take, a program in place for the next 3 to 5 years to get us out of using this as a way to fund ops and use it as a tool for disaster recovery. So thank you.
It looks like we're coming to the end of the first round. Ms. Michaels.
I see both sides and a little bit of everything else. I don't care for the tax anticipation warrants, but I understand that they're necessary, and sometimes you have to do things that are necessary. However, I would see that we need to start scaling back, maybe on a percentage, because I don't think you can just cut somebody off completely. But I do see where we need to start looking at maybe cutting back on a percentage and make it less dependent upon the full amount every year.
Mr. Maxwell.
Jeff, believe it or not, I do have a figure in mind. And I don't think maybe I want to release that this evening, but it would take a lot of effort to get there. But we need a certain amount of cash to operate and have a balance, so that the ups and downs, just like the corporate fund, you've got to have a certain amount. And I have a pretty good idea what that is. And I know how much it's going to take to get us to not only eliminate the need to borrow, but how much of cash balance we need. And I'll be glad to provide that to you. Or if we want to do some more studying, if we want to have our administration do some more projections and this sort of thing, that would be fine. But I have a rough idea what that amount would be.
Thank you. Anybody else for round one? Mr. Carter.
Make sure I got it right. This is about the nursing home, right? Yes, sir. What is the main drain that's on the nursing home that causes the financial problem? Can anybody tell me that?
Mr. Harkey or Maxwell, do you want to take a stab at that? I mean, there's a lot of expenses over there, a lot of revenue. Mr. Harkey.
The reason that the nursing home does not return as large a profit as many private nursing homes is very simple. We take in many more Medicaid patients than any other private nursing home. Basically, we're taking care of poor folks who can't pay for everything, and we're waiting on state Medicaid reimbursement, which is lower. If we went to the average mix of the other nursing homes in this county on private pay and strictly Medicare, we'd be making bank. But we don't. We have a mission to take care of the poor and the needy in this community, and that's why we are constantly having cash flow issues. Now, we are working through those. I'll go ahead and make my statement I meant to make. As a guy with an economics degree, I despise the comparison of government to home and business budgets. However, what you're asking is what my wife in the jewelry business would want, to have maybe 2 Christmases during the year. Because we all know that in most retail businesses, you don't make a dime until Christmas time, and that's where you make your profit. You have to run a line of credit during April to make your payroll so that you can then pay that off with all the money you make at Christmas time. We are held by a similar schedule in that we receive tax income only certain times of the year. We have to float a loan to get to that point. Now, I'm with Gary. I would like to see us get to a cash position where we don't have to do this, and this is something we are trying to manage through at the nursing home. But in the meantime, we are going to continue to have to do this. And I'm asking folks to help us, every time we come to a problem like this with the nursing home, it seems it gets an awful lot of scrutiny, which is fairly deserved. But I think Rachel makes a great point in that the county itself does this every year in lending money from the public safety sales tax to general corporate, so that we do not have to take anticipation warrants and pay interest on that. Now, if the nursing home If it was free for us to borrow this money out of the public safety sales tax, $1 million, and hand that back to the county for free in 6 months, we'd be happy to do that and save the money. But I don't see that happening. So this has been past practice for a long time. It's a practice we would like to get out of, but it does keep the nursing home stable, and it is something that will be paid off the moment we get our tax for this next year.
Thank you. Mr. Carter, do you want to follow up?
Yeah. Mr. Harkey, I happen to be in the nursing home. And my misfortune was they ran my insurance company out of the state before I got out. But Medicare paid for me. And I looked at my bill, brother, and they paid good for me.
That's Medicare, which we regularly want Medicare. That's the program that the federal government runs for folks over 65. What I'm talking about is Medicaid, which is for anyone of any age who is of a certain poverty level. They're two different programs. Medicare is run by the feds, as we've talked about several times. That's why they always have money, because the federal government can get money. Medicaid is run by the state, which is constantly running into budgetary problems, admittedly. So that's why we're having troubles. But we're working through it, and hopefully we can manage through this. And again, that is why we have lower revenues, because we're taking care of poor folks.
Well, don't that make sense that we all need insurance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Harkey, I had you next to speak. Do you have anything else to add, or did you just say your piece? Okay, I've got Mr. James next.
I guess just to follow up, all I was trying to do is open up and say we need to look at options, because this always comes up, and I understand farmers get loans, and I understand business is different than government, because as business, we don't have an unlimited supply of money, and we can't keep raising taxes to pay bills, because eventually we're gonna run out of tax money, because the folks paying it are getting tired of it. And I look at life, when I'm sitting here, it's all of our money. We're supposed to do due diligence. We're supposed to be representing the folks that are out there, not always looking at how big can we be and what fees can we raise and how much more property tax can we squeeze out of somebody. This is not a corporation. And Josh, your comment on the taxes, my point is that granted, we get taxes to run that place. The year they come in, they ought to offset the bills we're generating. But we're going a year out on taxes to pay bills that are due this year. So my problem is we need to look at options. We need to streamline. And let's face it, we hear it every day out there in the real world. There is a lot of waste in government, a lot of waste. And unless we're looking at options to control it, we're never going to find them. And the last comment I'll make is I know a lot of farmers that have taken loans, and boy, do they love them, and I enjoy 2 Christmases. I love everything about Christmas. But I know a lot of farmers that by taking loans, they've lost everything, including their house.
Mr. Langenheim.
I'd just like to remind my compatriots here that the nursing home is a public institution, and it is not a profit-making business.
I'm sorry, could you give us that last part again?
Okay, what happened there? Oh, I'd just like to remind you, all you guys, that this is a public institution. We're not supposed to make a profit.
Thank you, Mr. Langenheim.
We're supposed to run even.
Would anyone else like to speak to this issue? I see Mr. Richards, and that's it.
I'd just like to say we should probably move on to a vote. Nobody likes this, but it sounds like everybody's going to vote for it, so let's get on with it.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Any additional comments, questions? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Maxwell? Yes. McGuire? Michaels? Yes. Petrie?
No.
Quisenberry? Yes. Richards? Yes. Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Yes. Berkson? Yes. Carter?
Microphone, please.
We can restate the motion.
I just want to be correct. Is this different from what we already give them, the 900 and something they come and ask for?
This is the same. The dollar. This is
a different deal, right?
Borrowing. This is them borrowing $900,000 against the property tax that they'll receive in this summer.
Well, I'm kind of out on the limb, because I went out when we billed that and asked the taxpayers to support that and put it on the vote for.
Mr. Carter, I really need a yes or a no.
So I hate it, but I'll say yes.
Thank you.
Coert?
Yes.
Esri?
Yes.
Harper,
No.
Hartke. James. Jay. Kibler,
Yes.
Kurtz. Langenheim. Alex. Oh, McGuire.
Excuse me, I do have, however, have a chair's report. While we're on the subject of the nursing home, the county administrator is proposing to put together a request for proposals for nursing home management services. This is the work that's currently done by MPA. They are nearing the end of their second, I believe, 3-year contract. That contract expires at the end of June of this year, so we're looking at our options. We expect MPA will probably be one of the bidders. We may also have others. In order that I would like to appoint an ad hoc committee to review the results of this RFP, as is our tradition. However, the county administrators asked if we could appoint them early so that they could actually participate in the development of the RFP. Along those lines, I would like to appoint ad hoc committee consisting of Ms. Kathy Emanuel, who's the chair of the Champaign County Nursing Home Board of Directors, Deb Busey, County Board and Nursing Home Board members Gary Maxwell and Josh Hartke, and in addition, county board members Jeff Kibler and Rachel Schwartz. If everyone is willing to do that, I would appreciate your assistance. Okay, we'll do it. Items for consent, A2 and 3, C1, 2, and 3, D1, E, and F4, and that concludes finance.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. Mr. Quisenberry, you're up, sir.
Good evening. First, for policy, personnel, and appointments, we have a nomination from the chair for the Nursing Home Board of Directors for 3 terms that will run from December 1st, 2013 through November 30th, 2015.
First, I want to say how elated I was at the quality of applicants we've been starting to see who are willing to put up public service for us and for the county. And in that vein, I think we have 3 incredibly talented people for the Nursing Home Board. My 3 appointments are Major General retired Donald W. Lynn, Mr. Sam Banks, and Ms. Catherine Emanuel.
Second. Seconded by Mr. Schrader. Do we have any discussion? Mr. Langenheim, microphone, please.
I think it might be appropriate to vote on these on an individual basis.
Are you moving to divide the question, Mr.
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes, I am.
Okay, is there discussion with regard to the motion to divide the question to 3 individual votes? Mr. Richards.
I do have a question for the mover. Why?
Mr. Langenheim, do you have an explanation?
What did he say?
He wants an explanation of why we're going to do it this way.
Why? Because there are individuals there. I think it more appropriate to vote on each one separately.
All right, Mr. Jay?
Well, I agree with that, Mr. Langenheim, but it is the chair's responsibility to make the suggestions to us, and he gave us 3, and I think that's appropriate.
All right, Ms. Petrie?
Well, my problem is that if all 3 are put up at the same time and one of the individuals put up generates a no vote, that no vote applies to all 3 of them, which doesn't seem very fair. These are individuals, and it is the chair's prerogative to put forward people, but it's also the county board's prerogative for advice and consent.
All right, seeing no other discussion, Mr. Rosales, do you want to say something?
Is there any specific reason why we have a title on one of the candidates and when we don't have titles on others?
Well, the others are not major generals. That's his title. And that was what he put on his application, so that's what we put on the agenda.
All right, seeing no further discussion a second time, we're going to have a vote on dividing the question. A vote yea will symbolize that you want it divided. A vote nay means we vote on all three of them together. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. The nays have it. We're going to vote on we'll return to regular discussion. I have a roll call requested. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. James seconds that. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Carter.
Again, y'all, we having a lot of problems, and I'm not real fussed about it. And I keep asking the question. These are the people that we voting on here, right?
There are three of them. Mr. Lynn, Mr. Banks, and Ms. Emanuel. Those are the ones nominated.
Well, who can vouch for them? Because I don't know too much about them, some of them.
Well, their applications are in the packet, and Mr. Kurtz has interviewed them.
Well, Regan, I'm saying this. We had a board, and this seemed it didn't help us any. Just being honest. Now we're picking another board that, I don't know, they could be John Who Food Boo. Are they capable of getting us in any physical shape than we already in?
Well, the nursing home board is in fact in place, and these are three seats that need to be reappointed. So we're not discussing whether there needs to be a board at this point or not.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna just tell you, and I'm not making, I'm going in the hospital and have an operation on this back and hope when I come out the first of the year, I'll be walking. And I grant you, I'll have some answers for you. I'm gonna support this because I can't see it fail now because, you know, I stuck my neck out. But this is ridiculous. This has been going on, man, there's no way in the world, I'm a minority business person, that if I had a track record like these folks, the bank wouldn't let me in the door. I'm just being honest with you. I couldn't borrow a cent. And when I do have a good one, it's hard to get in it. Now, this has been going on over 10 years, you all. This is ridiculous now. I'm gonna vote for it now. I'm gonna go for it. But I tell you,
all right.
I'm gonna do my homework when I get back.
Okay, do we have any other discussion? Ms. Schwartz?
Just a question. Who are the two people who are not coming back? I know one of them is Mr. Tchaikovsky, who's...
LaShonda Hambrick.
Okay, so...
I just said it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Mr. Tchaikovsky was the one that had this financial expertise, so we don't have really a replacement. I don't know, do you know if any one of them...
have financial expertise?
Oh, yeah,
Which one is that?
all of them, actually. Mr. Banks has had a financial background,
Okay.
as well as the Major General
Well, he's
has
more
run a nursing home
administrator.
in the Army for 600 and developed
Yeah, I read his
financial, I mean, if you look at his resume, it's 5 pages long. Sitting in with him and talking, I talked with him for an hour. His expertise is so far beyond an overqualified for this position. He's an extraordinary gentleman, and I was just proud to nominate him.
All right. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire? Michaels?
Yes.
Petrie?
No.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Sorry. Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex? Berkson? Carter?
Yes.
Coert?
Yes.
Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke? James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim.
Out of
And
the
he's
room.
out.
Motion passes. Moving on, we have the appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals for 3 different terms, or 3 different seats, term running December 1st, 2013 through November 30th, 2018. Mr. Kurtz gets to make the motion.
I get to make. Once again, I mean, John and I have been looking for ZBA members for how long, John? Been a year or more. And out of it came 3 phenomenal applicants. All of them have expertise. Some have a law background. Ms. Capel has been an incumbent on the ZBA. Ms. Deborah Geist, she was the former chair of the ZBA. And Ms. Marilyn Lee has a law degree as well as lives in Homer and has a farm there. And so I felt very privileged to have 3 good applicants for the ZBA. And so I will nominate Catherine Capel, Deborah Geist, and Marilyn Lee.
Mr. J, is that your second I heard earlier?
You second that?
A pre-second? Any discussion? Mr. Alex?
Mr. Kurtz, you don't have a Bible in front of you. You can put your hand on the county board agenda and swear that the term dates on all of these terms tonight are right?
Yes. I can.
Thank you, sir.
We have been, if not, blame Ms. Busey, please.
I do that all the time. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Langenheim, use the microphone, please.
I'd like to repeat the motion that got skunked on the previous question. And let me tell you why. If you have a deep objection to one of these people, are you forced to vote for that person? Or are you, if you vote against them, you're turning down 2 people you're in favor of?
We have a discussion now, and you can tell me if you.
I have another motion to divide the question. Do I have a second? Mr. Alex seconds, and you have spoken to the reason for your motion this time.
I think I've already spoken to it. If you have a serious objection, I'm not saying that I do. If you have a serious, this is a matter of, this is the way it's done, for goodness sakes. You're appointing individuals. You're not, these are not joint appointments.
All right, any further discussion on the motion to divide the question? Again, an aye divides, a nay will say keep them together.
Roll call on this motion?
You're asking for a roll call? Is there a second? Ms. Petrie has seconded the call for roll call. Would the clerk call the roll on the motion to divide the question, please?
Maxwell? No. McGuire? No. Michaels? No. Mitchell? Not there. Petrie?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
No.
Schrader? No. Schwartz? No. Alex? Yes. Bergson?
Yes.
Carter?
I just got hit with a brick.
Yes or no?
No.
Coert? No. Esri?
No.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
No.
James?
I need my brick back. No.
Jay?
No.
Kibler?
What is that?
Kurtz?
Yay or nay?
Kurtz?
I'm sorry.
Yes or
no?
no?
No.
Langenheim?
Pathetically, yes.
What?
Yes, of course.
Quisenberry?
No. That also fails. Back to the discussion at hand. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, moving on. We get a couple more chances at this tonight.
I'll give you another shot.
For the appointment to the Public Aid Appeals Committee, again, 3 seats for terms running December 1st, 2013 through November 30th, 2015. Mr. Kurtz, your nomination.
Let me tell you, the Public Aids Appeals Committee is a very rare occurrence. It happens maybe a couple of times a year, and we've already gone through 5 this year, and 4 of the participants never showed up, so we were sitting around. These are incumbents who are either elected officials like Mr. Quanstrom. So I'm appointing Mr. Bernie Magnuson, Andrew Quanstrom, and Brian Ronger to the Public Aids Appeal Committee.
Second. I have a second by Mr. Schrader. Do we have discussion? Mr. Rosales.
For the viewing audience, does the board really could deny any appointments made by the chair? I think if the chair basically appoints individuals to serve at his leisure to these committees, but if the majority of us say no, you mean you just throw it back out, or?
Yes, if we were to vote against one of Mr. Kurtz's appointments, he would need to present us with another candidate in the future.
So when we vote for it for an omnibus motion, all 3, you really are supporting the motion of all 3 candidates, not just because you have a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, essentially. And on many times before, without Mr. Langenheim's complaint, we have omnibused 10, 15
Right.
drainage districts appointments and voted them all up or down at one point.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Mr. Alex?
At the risk of belaboring this more than it deserves, I do agree strongly with Mr. Langenheim. If we're appointing individuals to a committee, I think those individuals are entitled to an up and down vote on their merits. It's a lot different than omnibusing a drainage district where we've only got one appointment for one person for each of 10 appointments. And in that case, I would assume if somebody had a specific issue with one of the candidates, a motion to divide the question would be successful. So I would argue in favor of bringing forth these names one at a time, but again, it's up to you and the chair.
All right, I'm going to make one comment. I think that would have a lot more bearing if the person moving to divide the question asked to have a specific nomination divided as opposed to just doing it on a general basis. Mr. Hartke.
Well, yeah, the forma is great and all of that. Let's count realities here. Who has 12 votes to defeat any of these candidates? Nobody. So let's just vote on them and go home and have dinner.
Thank you, Mr. Hartke.
Thank you, Mr. Hartke.
That being said, to remind you, we're voting on the Public Aid Appeals Committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Moving on, for the Penfield Water District, one unexpired term ending May 31st, 2014. Mr. Kurtz.
Just one. I haven't even made the name yet. Mr. Maxwell, give me a break. Let me put the name in nomination. Mr. Rick Johnson at the Penfield Water District.
Mr. James seconds. Any
Oh,
discussion?
you wanted to second it. Is that why you raised your hand? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. James is just too fast.
Too fast.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Okay, first one for the consent agenda. Next, for the Summer Number 1 Drainage District, one unexpired term ending August 31st, 2015. Mr. Kurtz.
I move Mr. William Schumate.
I have a second by Mr. Schrader. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Okay, next for the Rural Transit Advisory Group, 2 seats that will run December 1st, 2013 through November 30th, 2015. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. Both are incumbents and have expertise in this area. Christine Bruns and Elaine Fowler Palencia are my appointments.
Second by Mr. Kibler. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Still going to take you home.
Finally, from our appointments, order, where's my gavel?
Where's your gap? Oh, I'm sorry, I left it in my office.
Okay.
Your microphone's not on.
Do you have a point of order or a point of?
No, the point of order was to stay on the agenda, but now I assume we're going.
Yes, the rules of the day are being followed at this point. For Senior Services Advisory Committee, again, 3 seats, running from December 1st, 2013 through November 30th, 2016. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. Again, these are incumbents who have experience in this area, so I'm appointing Cynthia Bell, Jimmy Kaiser, and Jane Nathan.
Seconded by Mr. McGuire. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay. Now, moving on to the next item, actually for the next item, which is under the County Board of Health list, I'm going to ask Mr. Kibler to run the meeting. You can do that from your seat probably, because I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion for this amendment to ordinance number 573, County Health Ordinance, Section 5, regarding inspection notice placards. Mr. Kibler. Yes, I am concerned that I might have a conflict of interest. I work at the University of Illinois in the housing division. Housing division is not subject to the health department's review. It's independent. It does its own work. But the private certified housing like Bromley Hall, Hendrick House, Newman, are under the public health district inspection and would be subject to this. And since my unit certifies those units, I'm going to take myself out of it.
Thank you. So going back to the orders of the day here, we're going to keep them as separate. I don't think we'll omnibus them. I think we'll get a lot of them out. But we're going to start with a motion for an amendment to ordinance number 573, the County Health Ordinance, Section 5, inspection notice placards.
Second.
So moved by Mr. James. Mr. Rosales seconded. Any discussion? Mr. James.
Well, I just want to say that this process has been over a 2-year process. I've heard comments tonight and also from our caucus. Change, we all admit, it's a hard thing to swallow. This thing's been looked at, fine-tuned. There's been a lot of good people. We have a lady on the Board of Health that's used to be with the CDC. The staff at CU Public Health did some research work. They attended some seminars and conferences. We've had people that have been hitting the website religiously looking at the inspection reports, which are quite detailed, and they mainly deal with the aspect of food preparation and what have you. They're not really looking at the building or the interior as much as they are as the sanitation and the food servers and what have you. A lot of other states, some other counties within our state have it. I think it's a great tool, and I'm one that there's no cost at this point for this new. They pay their fees to be licensed. This will all be part of the program. There will be some stipulations with it. But I know that when I travel and when I've been around, and if I see a sign, just like Better Business, it gives me a leg up to think that I'm doing business with a company that knows what they're doing. So I'm in support of this. It's been a long time coming, and I think that in the long run, it'll be a good tool and it'll be very useful for the whole county.
Thank you. Mr. Kurtz.
I want to impress the board how important I think this is. I've been in business as a restaurateur for 11 years, and also I have seen what foodborne disease looks like personally. My son didn't contact it from food, but salmonella is a prevalent disease that comes out of poor sanitation in restaurants. This is a health and safety issue. I think our community should know when they walk into a restaurant that they're getting served by the best equipment and best sanitation that they can, and that their child children are protected, and that they have a notification that this responsible restaurateur has acceded to the rules and has passed the inspection for safety. This is a responsibility that I think would help in prevention, because it now signals to a restaurant owner that your business is important to you, and if it's important to you, it's got to be important to the public. And so you need to be able to make sure that when you're inspected, you pass that inspection because of the safety issue that occurs. So I want to tell you that we've had public hearings on this. We've had restaurateurs come in and look at these placards. I had a phone call today from a restaurateur who has 2 restaurants here in Champaign, and he said, you know, he feels comfortable with this, but he would like us to keep an oversight and data on it over the next couple of months. Mr. Roberts can give you some other explanations as to the turnaround time. We've shortened it up. We now have, Jim, do you have that flyer with you? This is a flyer that will be given to a restaurateur who fails his inspection notice. What's that? It's a draft? Okay. What this notice means is that once the inspection is done, that they will fill out this form and get it to the Department of Health, Mr. Roberts' office, that says we have now complied and have corrected the problem. Please come back and re-inspect us. And I was against this 30-day placard. I can tell you that I'm sure you've heard me say that. We're talking now on a 2 to 3 day turnaround, which will certainly expedite someone who wants to keep their restaurant open and keep it clean. So I can only tell you how important this is from someone who's a businessman, who's been in business, who's been in the restaurant business, and never failed, I'll tell you because of my wife most likely, never failed an inspection in 11 years. Because we felt we were on campus and we were serving kids our own age, our own children. So I can only tell you that Jim has done a yeoman's job over 2 years of putting this together, listening to the community, listening to restaurateurs, listening to businessmen, and yes, listening to the chamber. I listen to the chamber. The chamber is important, okay? And I listen to what they have to say. I don't have to always agree with them. They're representing their constituents, I understand that, but not all of them, Ryan. Many of your restaurateurs have been to this public hearing and agreed with Jim that because they're responsible, they don't want irresponsible people who run restaurants to be able to get away with it and hurt their reputation because a foodborne illness that we've seen can affect the entire community. Hundreds of people can be affected by a foodborne illness out of one restaurant. And so I think this is a very important issue and that we need to take more steps to be able to safeguard our community. And I think Jim's done a yeoman job, and so has the Champaign-Urbana Public Health staff, in making sure that our community is safe for people to eat in the restaurants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. Ms. Berkson.
It used to be that when a place flunked its sanitary test, they closed it until it could pass it. That makes sense, but placards I don't understand, and people don't understand, and some of them are supposed to be not so bad, and some of them are supposed to be worse, and nobody knows what's good and what's bad. And close them if they're dangerous, and other than that, they don't need placards.
Thank you, Ms. Berkson. Ms. Petrie.
Thank you very much. I am 10,000% for safety within restaurants, so my points do not negate that at all. My points do not change from the time Mr. Roberts was here and presented all of this to us. I asked him some very serious questions and he was very gracious to spend an additional 90 minutes with me on a one-on-one conversation. None of that has resolved my huge reservations for this particular developed mechanism. And my reservations are the following. Number one, a restaurant can get a green sticker and have one of the most egregious offenses possible, but that offense does not knock the points down so that the restaurant will not have a green sticker, and the point system has not been adjusted. Number two, this system that they are using is copied after the one in Oakland, California. And I asked Mr. Roberts during our conversation if at any time they had engaged any of the people on campus who could have helped them figure out a point system that would not have put the placards in such a situation that the restaurant appears to be okay when in fact there are other issues going on in the back of the restaurant and that's not being indicated by the placard. I really would like to see them step back, engage a little bit more assistance so that we have the best system in the country rather than just falling in step with another system in the state of California. And we have help in this community that we could do that. So I can't support it in its present format.
Thank you, Ms. Petrie. Mr. Harper.
I believe Mr. Kurtz answered a lot of it. I had a question really for Stan James. Can the health department make the try? I mean, if you have a minor infraction, you get the yellow placard or whatever. I mean, can they get back? I mean, the businessman's rely on his doors being open. I mean, can they get back for the re-inspections? I'm all for safety, but yeah, I've been all for safety, and but
point of order, do we not have to go into, what's the word? Suspend the rules to allow for this? So is that a motion to suspend the rules? In second? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Well,
Oh, okay. Would we want to discuss it? Is that what you're referencing, Mr. James?
Well, I was going to
Suspending the rules?
respond to his question real fast, and I was just going to say that we did discuss that. Jim and his staff, like the notice was given earlier, they will get out there on that. I hear a lot of things here tonight. You know, these meetings were open. We always ask for input. I get so angry at people that after the fact, they all want to sit down and tell us what's wrong and what could have been, and I'm like, are you kidding me? We sat there for hours with open meetings and tried everything we could to get people involved, just like we do here. Then everybody always wants to nitpick, and even me sometimes, because I fall asleep at the switch. But I do want to say that, yes, it's a fair system. Is it perfect? Heck no, everything evolves. And I've been with Mr. Roberts and his staff on some inspections, and I'll tell you what, I was amazed. And all of us go in with opinions or ideas, but I watched them. They were fair with the people. They were very concise. You know, all I can say is kudos to them. It's a job, and some of it we don't understand. Some of the issues I'm hearing here, I hear a lot of different stories, and Jim will tell you, he's going to tell you right now, they look at food safety and sanitation of the workers. And I'm here to tell you, like Mr. Kurtz said, I've seen photographs, I've seen things, and it's not a pretty sight. So when you're all talking, walk into them kitchens as the cook allows you to. You'll be the first one saying, please do something, and we're trying. But if we never get off the ground, we're never going to do anything.
Thank you, Mr. James. So the motion has been pushed to suspend the rules. So at this point, maybe the question, since it originated from you, the same question be given to the person we suspended the rules for. So I guess the same question for Jim? Or
yeah, basically, is the turnaround, I mean, is the public health department have the capabilities to get back to these places that have the minor infractions that maybe can fix it in a day or two? That's basically my concern.
Well, first, you know, the yellow reinspection facility earns this by getting 5 or 6 of these things that are indicated on here, plus they have demerits for repeat violations. So in order to fail an inspection, you have to get an adjusted score of less than 36%. And so you have to be doing many things wrong. And so if they can correct those items and tell us that they have those corrected, we'll come out and do a reinspection. That's what we do today. I mean, today, right now, you don't know who has failed their inspection. We give them 30 days, so you have no idea. And so we give people up to 30 days to correct it, and we make an unannounced reinspection. By this way, we're increasing the time that we'd be out there because it's in the businessman's interest to get this off the door.
Any other question regarding the in the suspension?
Before I do, I think Mr. Alex had his hand up quite a while ago, so I would.
He does, but we would want to go back into, or out of suspension of the rules before we.
Okay. I don't have any questions for Mr. Roberts, but I've got statements to make.
Okay. I'll put you at the end of the list if that's okay. Mr. Schroeder? So, Jim, you have a question, Mr. McGuire, excuse me, have a question for Mr. Roberts. Go ahead.
Has there been any discussion, I mean, has there been any, you know, the public doesn't seem to understand this is coming. I think that's the biggest issue. With the economy the way it's been, these businesses have been struggling, and I'm afraid if all of a sudden they see this yellow flag go up on the front of a business and they don't really understand what it's about, that it could really hurt them. And I understand, because we want to have healthy restaurants, but this is something completely new, and, you know, you could shut down a business just by putting one of these things up, just because people don't understand what they are. So when you're talking about inspectors, how many inspectors do you have to go back out and do these inspections? And what are we looking at as far as, you know, letting people understand throughout the communities that what these things are? Because, you know, people respond a lot differently what you expect. It sounds like we've done everything we can through this 2-year process and have all the information that we're supposed to have to come up with the program, but not a lot to go out to the community besides one article that we just see in the paper.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Mr. Langenheim, do you have a question for Mr. Roberts? No. I will put you at the end of it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Roberts? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
Let's see if I remember. I have 9 inspectors, and it's divided between district facilities as well as the county facilities. And, you know, it's always been our procedure to, when someone says that, you know, they're ready to go, you know, we have closed places, you know. This allows people to continue to operate. But if they fail an inspection, then we have closed facilities. And even when we close a facility, we have worked with them to get them open as soon as we are confident that they have demonstrated that they have corrected the violations or have a program in place so it doesn't reoccur. And so that happens, and sometimes it takes a little longer for someone to demonstrate that to us.
Mr. James?
And the education of the public?
Sorry, Mr. McGuire, go ahead.
Jim. The question about education of the public?
Well, I think the education of the public does come through the media, and so I've had a number of media interviews, and I expect more from this program as well.
And what's your response time with the inspectors you have now under the program that you currently have? How long does it take you to return to a facility?
Well, currently, we do a reinspection approximately 30 days after they failed the initial inspection. And that was just a long time standing procedure. Well, and then, yeah, what you know, we're thinking of is that there should be a minimum time where someone has to post this, so we take care of public disclosure and awareness. And during that time, I would expect an operator to correct those issues, fill out the sheet that says, you know, gives us a written statement that says that we've corrected these violations, we're ready for a reinspection. And they can do that to me in any, say the minimum time is 3 business days, they can do that in any time during those 3 business days. And then what I'd like to do is do a reinspection within maybe 48 hours, just like with the water or sewage program. We ask the contractors to contact us so we have a time that we can get out there to do a reinspection. One of the things that I'd like to keep is it be an unannounced reinspection, because a long time ago we used to say, I'm going to come back Thursday at 10 o'clock, and everyone was out of the kitchen, and we don't get a real picture of what's happening. So I'd like to keep a little bit of this unannounced reinspection, and that's part of the reason why we did it for 30 days.
Mr. James?
And Mr. McGuire, I would tell you that it was the public that was hitting the website and sending in questions, so they are aware of it. And CU, Citizen Access paper, I think is the name of the paper, Pam Dempsey, has done numerous articles on this and called, and there's inspection reports on their website. And Jim can tell you as well as I can, there are certain requirements of restaurants now, but there is no ordinance to make them effective, and that's putting up choking posters and other things. And right now, they have to display their little public health of license certificate, which we talked about. And some, well, they have them in there, but they're not prominently displayed. And I get questions all the time when people have complaints. Who do we call? Do they call the local government or the public health or who? So that's why some of this is coming about.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Carter, do you have a question for Mr. Roberts?
Well, not in part, but I just want to say, back in the 40s, early 40s, Champaign County, the most job was in this town was restaurants. That was the source of the job. Now, once a month, if you was in food service, you had to go down to the health department and be checked. What happened with this? I'm trying to figure out, and this was the law. If you didn't go down there and had your card and kept that card, you didn't work. I'm serious about this. Right here in Champaign County. Now, lately, I go around and ask questions about these restaurants, and do they even have inspection hardly anymore?
Medical inspections or medical.
You said
medical.
keep this on the wall, posted.
Yeah, there has been found out that it's not cost effective to medically screen individuals on a monthly basis like that.
Well, what's getting wrong with us? We coming up with all kinds of diseases that I never heard of before.
Mr. Carter, point taken.
No,
I
I'm
think he
serious.
answered your
Every
question,
time you
though.
turn the TV on, they done experienced another disease. Now, you going out here, and this was the other night. We was in, I'm not going to call the place, but we was in Burger King. This young man came out and was fixing burgers. No, barehanded. He was put on the preparation table fixing burgers, and I called attention to the manager. And she stopped him and had to go back and look on the computer and see why he started and correct it. Now, come on, folks, this is ridiculous, y'all. Why is, you know what I'm saying? Why they not in, the law's on the book, don't tell me, I know they're on the book, because we used to have to fly by them. Why are they not enforcing the law?
Well, I think this will help because one of those categories is allowing contamination by hands. And so when we do our inspections, if we note it, that will be on there. And so the public will be able to see this. And that's the whole point, is the increased awareness, the increased conversations to correct those items, and to take those actions to correct it. And I think that'll produce a healthier community.
Thank you.
Well, this is a good thing. It's late. We should. It came up before. I don't know what happened to it. It must have fell in the cracks, but we had the same conversation about the rural restaurants. Everybody thought because it's in the rule, it's all right to go out there and eat some tainted meat. I didn't think that made much sense to me. You know, if you're going to prepare somebody's food, it should be safe for you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Are there any other discussions for Mr. Roberts? Any direct questions for Mr. Roberts before I ask someone to put us back into the rules? Can I have a motion to unsuspend the rules?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Great. Mr. Alex, back on the main motion.
Thank you, sir. I'm really conflicted about this. I mean, I feel that the CU Public Health District does a terrific job policing restaurants in this community. I think restaurant inspection is extremely important. I eat the vast majority of my meals in restaurants and, you know, have had very positive experiences with most of the restaurants in Champaign County. I think it's very important that restaurants that either represent an imminent threat to public safety or represent an ongoing source of danger without attempts to correct it need to be closed down. And I know that the Public Health Department does not hesitate to do that, and I appreciate that very much. I also think making the restaurant inspection results available online is good. I understand at this point they're not put there directly by the Public Health District, but they're obtained under the FOIA Act by a group in the community that does it, which is not quite the perfect solution, but it's good that they're out there. I don't think this needs to be a secretive process. I like the fact that people can go and see the history of inspections at a restaurant to get a picture in context of how good a job that establishment does protecting our health. That being said, I have a couple issues with the proposed placard system. One is that I feel that if we're going to impose a requirement like this on business owners, there needs to be a credible correlation between the color of the placard on the door and the likelihood that I'm going to get sick eating at that restaurant. And my feeling is that inspections are done so infrequently and represent just a snapshot in time that it may not give a very good picture. It probably has a lot more to do with whether that restaurant was inspected on the Friday before Dad's Day weekend when the kitchen was slammed, or inspected on a Tuesday morning when they'd had time to clean everything up. I understand the inspections are unannounced, but I'm concerned that a restaurant's score is likely to vary significantly based on time of day, based on day of the week that the restaurant's inspected. I would also note that a green sign in the window of a restaurant gives you no necessary sense of security, because all it takes is a server who's there working sick because they don't have sick leave to cough on your food, or the one bad oyster in an otherwise pristine kitchen, and you're going to get sick. It doesn't happen very often. The rate of foodborne illness in Champaign County is very low, but it can happen. Likewise, you can probably eat at a restaurant that has a yellow sign in the window every day of the year, and you're probably not going to get sick, because again, the rate of foodborne illness is very low, and if they are truly a dangerous facility, I trust in the process that the health department will probably have shut them down by then. So I'm concerned about both creating a false sense of security and creating needless fear in the dining public. And the worst thing we can do is drive people away from a restaurant to eat in a home kitchen, because the average home kitchen is probably significantly higher risk of foodborne illness than the average restaurant kitchen. So I'm concerned again about, if we're going to impose this, I want to know that we're doing it for a good reason. Finally, there's an potential unintended consequence about this that I'm very concerned about, is that right now, the relationship between the inspector and the establishment as to these violations that don't rise to the level of severity that require closing the establishment, that's essentially a cooperative relationship. The inspector goes into the establishment, is given access, finds things that are wrong, can work with the owner of the establishment to essentially negotiate what needs to be corrected and when it needs to be corrected. There are certain deficiencies that are corrected on site before the inspector leaves. There are certain ones that are done later. My concern is that with the yellow placard system, we're essentially introducing a punitive component into that inspection process. So the inspector is not just saying, look, if we find something wrong, we're going to negotiate, we're going to work with you on how to fix it. They're going to say, if we find something wrong, we're going to put a sign in your window that is going to potentially drive people away from your restaurant. And to me, I'm concerned that that is going to make it more likely that inspectors are going to overlook violations, are going to be put under pressure by owners to, it's like the cop pulls you over going 80 and writes a ticket for 79, so you don't, your ticket isn't as high. I'm not saying that the inspectors are subject to this kind of pressure, but I'm saying I think it creates a relationship where the inspector is viewed in a much different light by the establishment owner, right? Most of the restaurants where an inspector goes in, they're not there to close them down, right? They're there to identify problems and help them resolve the problems. If one of the consequences of that inspection is they're going to get this scarlet letter on the door, then I think that relationship may be significantly less productive. Two things I've heard that I like. One is the discussion of, one is that it appears that the score required to get a yellow placard under this system is quite low. I mean, if the number were set at 75%, I would be dead set against this. I think we see 36% and we laugh. We say, oh my God, the place must be filthy. But the point of the matter is, it's not that difficult for a busy kitchen on a bad day to fall down to that score, even if that's not the norm at that restaurant. And the other thing I like that I hear is the 3-day reinspection. But I would notice I do know that that's not in the ordinance. I mean, we're not, what I'm being asked to approve here does not say, if you get a yellow placard, you're gonna get reinspected, you're gonna request a reinspection within 3 business days. So I'm concerned that may be something that we're saying, but I don't know whether resources are actually going to be available to do that. So those are my concerns over the program.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. People who haven't spoken yet, Mr. Schrader.
I think the chair has something. He had his hand wagging here real quick. I'll defer to him, then get back to me if you would, please.
Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you, John. Chris, I understand both of your arguments here, but if we put in the ordinance a 3-day turnaround and they're not fixed, then we put a red placard or we continue on for the next 3 days. This is what I think will make that difference, is when they're ready to be reinspected, then they can immediately call Jim and submit one of these saying, I'm now ready. But if we automatically put in to the ordinance a 3-day turnaround, they may not be ready for a reinspection. They may need to have more time to reinspect.
Mr. Alex,
Yeah,
quick response.
could I just clarify what my concern was? My concern is that I want to know that a restaurant owner who gets one of these yellow placards and does clean up his act the next day can get reinspected in 3 days. And there's no assurance in this ordinance that that would be the case.
You're on the list. All right, thank you. We're going back to Mr. Schrader.
Thank you. And I won't belay the point any further, just to say that the points that Mr. Alex made about the placard are much more succinct and clear than probably I could even achieve. So I'll agree with his points about the placard, which concern me. The other thing I want to bring up, and I just want to preference by saying, too, that, we rely on heavily as consumers that go out to restaurants and stuff, heavily on the public health department. They do a tremendous job. We've not had a restaurant foodborne illness outbreak in I don't know how many years, so it's a huge credit to the health department. But another concern that I want to bring up, too, is, this not only includes restaurants, which are heavily used here, Champaign, Urbana, Savoy area, and you can even go further out to the Rantoul, Muhammad areas. But I want to focus on those restaurants are out further in the county that in the past I've experienced that at least one close to me where they tried to open, tried to proceed with all the correct inspections. The individual who opened a restaurant used to work for a particular fraternity or sorority up here, Champaign, thought they knew all the inspection rules and everything, got the initial inspection, and may have been a mild infraction or anything. It would take 2 to 3 weeks for a reinspection. Now, I'm not nitpicking at the public health department. I'm just stating the fact that to get back out there within 2 to 3 days, if you do pull a yellow placard, I can't believe you're going to get back out there 2 to 3 days. There's restaurants, especially in my area out there. There's one in Ivedale and outside my area, Philo, and Tolono has several. It's disconcerting to me that you're going to put basically a label on these restaurants, and whether they're deserved or not, that could definitely hurt, because there's not the volume that we've got here in the municipalities, the larger municipalities out there in the rural areas. And if you yellow ticker somebody out there, it could be the death knell of them, because people might run away from. It might just be a mild, just like Mr. Alex was saying. It could be maybe they got slammed on a Friday for lunch, and your inspector shows up, and they get a yellow placard. I just can't believe you're going to be out there within 2 to 3 days for reinspection. It just very much concerns me. With the same amount of staff you're going to have, you're going to put in this placard system, and you're going to be able to make it function like that. When you've got people's lives on the line and their investments and their time and effort and their blood and their sweat and toil, and they get a yellow placard and they're pretty much done. Just labeling these restaurants, to me, is a big problem. And I'm very much against this.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Sticking with people who have not yet spoken, going to Mr. Langenheim.
I think we've covered this subject pretty thoroughly. I don't think we're going to find any new insights, so therefore I'd like to call the question.
Call the question by Mr. Langenheim, second by Mr. James. Any questions on the called, or excuse me, any discussion on the call to question? Actually, there's no discussion on it, is there? There was a roll call. So no, once it's called, you can't ask for a roll call on the main motion. Okay, great. All in favor of, okay, there's a roll call on the main motion and on the, that's fair, I'll go with it. So,
The call of the question was already made, so how can they make a motion?
you're right, I was gonna allow it, but that's fair.
Thank you.
Call to question's been made, now, granted, all in favor of calling the question, which immediately then puts us in a spot where we have to vote on the main motion. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Ayes have it. Now we call the question to the main motion, which, again, the main motion is to amend ordinance number 573, County Health Ordinance, Section 5, inspection notice placards only. Roll call's been asked. What a slot. No. There was a roll call called. Who was the second? Mr. McGuire called it. So we're going to do roll call. Please call the roll. Yes passes the placards. No says no to the placards.
Maxwell? No. McGuire? Michaels? Yes. Petrie? No. Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader? Nope. Schwartz? No. Alex? No. Bergson?
No.
Carter?
It's not an amendment. It's a yes or no on the placards, on the actual main motion of the ordinance.
There are no two parts.
Not to this. This is the first motion that we've brought up to this.
I just misheard you.
Great.
I just want to be clear.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Coert? Esri?
No.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Kurtz?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Kibler?
No. Motion fails, I believe. With that, with the motion failing, there is still a second item on the agenda. You can take it back, Mr. Chair.
All right, moving on. The next item under the Board of Health, Section B, is the amendment to ordinance number 573, the County Health Ordinance, Section 12, regarding fee waivers for nonprofit organizations. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Alex, seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes. Next, we have the report from the county clerk for October 2013. I entertain a motion to accept it and place it on file. Moved by Mr. James, seconded by Ms. Cowart. Any questions or discussion about the report? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Okay, moving on to the county administrator section. We have the administrative services report for October 2013. And I would entertain a motion to accept and place on file. Moved by Mr. Esri. Seconded by Mr. Rosales. Any questions for Deb? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes. And you have the holiday calendar for Champaign County in your packet for your information. And finally, Mr. Kibler.
So per the, maybe a little bit of discussion on this, the holiday calendar, granted, it's not something we can move today since it's for information only, but I would like to see a little bit more consistency and assistance with the current staffing. I would almost like to see the county board be moved to 6 o'clock on the day that it's there.
This is just we're talking about the holiday calendar at this point. You'll have your moment
fine.
in a
I want
moment.
all holidays moved to 6 o'clock as well. That'd be great. Thank you.
Christmas is only 6 o'clock? Okay.
That is correct.
All right. Did anybody have any other business before we move to the chair's report? Okay, moving on to the chair's report. You have in your packet a calendar of meetings. Before we move on that calendar, actually, I'll entertain a motion to pass the calendar of meetings first. Mr. Alex, seconded by Mr. James. And then as we start our discussion, I would like to suggest that we amend this calendar. Somebody make a motion to amend this calendar to start all evening county board meetings at 6:30. And that would mean that our full board meetings and our cows and the facilities and ELUC meetings would start at 6:30. So the public would then would know that all county board meetings start at 6:30. And it would also provide an hour, roughly, maybe a little bit more of time prior to the cow for caucuses to meet. So would anybody willing to make that amendment?
Are you sure you want to include highway?
I did not include highway. ELUC and facilities were the only two.
Okay.
Highway is at 9 in the morning, and I don't want to move it to 8:30, so, or 9:30. Mr. Hartke, I saw your motion to make that amendment that all county board meetings start at 6:30 in the evening. Mr. James, are you going to second that?
No.
I need a second then. Ms. Berkson seconded. Mr. James, you want to talk? I'm going to let you talk.
Yeah, I sure do. I would like to amend that to be at 6 PM for all meetings due to the schedule of some of us that drive and the layover. And I understand people like to have a caucus and chew the fat and talk, but we do enough of that in here.
Mr.
And I
James?
think it would be better for staff. Thank you.
We already have an amendment on the floor.
And you can
So-
amend the
Second
amendment.
and re-amended.
I'll
You
second
want to
that
amend the
to
amendment to all meetings starting at 6 PM.
That's correct.
And Mr. Kibler seconded that.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's discuss the amendment to the amendment. Ms. Petrie?
Point of clarification, isn't this second amendment superfluous? Let's vote on the first one. If it fails, we're back to the 6 PM.
Except for county board meetings.
You're back to 7. You're back to the original.
Yeah, just back to the original.
They want to move county board meetings to 6 o'clock.
Yeah, the effect of Mr. James's amendment is to only move the full board meeting to 6 PM, whereas the other amendment would move all board meetings to start at 6:30. So any more discussion on Mr. James's adjustment? Mr. Kibler?
So I really like your amendment. I wish I would have made it myself at the right time. Honestly, there's several factors why I think it should be at 6 o'clock, and I think several members of the caucus, and I think other caucus members outside of the Republican caucus may agree. Consistency is important. 6 o'clock is a standard time that we do with every other meeting, with the exception of the full board meeting. To have it at 6 o'clock would help with not only those in the rural areas, but also help just getting home in general at a decent hour. I completely understand the argument that caucuses need to be held, discussion needs to be had amongst the caucus members. My recommendation would be is if there is a desire or need to do it, either make those caucuses at 5 o'clock or earlier, or plan them a little bit sooner in advance. Just to keep not only the time of the county board members, honestly, it's also about the staff that has to be here as well. They're away from family. It's also time that we have to comp back to them later on. It's not helpful to just extend it out beyond just assisting county board members with having a little extra time to gab amongst themselves. So I would really like to see this at 6 o'clock.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Mr. Carter?
You know, I never see so many changes in the board meetings before in my life. I used to work in Danville when I first got on this board. And I had to ride from Danville to take a shower to come to my meetings. But bless those prior county board members that had common sense. To give everybody a break. Let everybody have a chance to serve. You know, if that was now, ain't no way in the world I could serve. Ain't no way I could drive to Danville when I got off of work, got home, take a shower, and be on time at the board meeting. And the board meeting was at 7 o'clock. Standard board meeting. For years, I mean years and years, that's what it was. And you knew what time your board was going to meet. But anymore, it's like a yo-yo. Every time you turn around, it's a different meeting schedule. Come on, folks, please. And say it again, he used to come around with a list and give it to each one of the members and put down what was comfortable for you to make the meeting. Yes, sir. I like that. That's respect, man. Just plain, common respect. Why can't we do that again? Why can't we do that again? Now, anybody get off at 5 o'clock, you might have to go pick up your kids, who know, or something, whatever it is. You're not going to have no time to run around, you know, and make these meetings the way they schedule now. And if you got caucus, if the caucus from 6 to 7, I sure would appreciate that.
All right, Mr. Kibler, you had a follow-up?
Very brief. If anybody on the board has a major concern, whether it's personal or business or whatever with the time can be adjusted. But it sounds like from discussions that I've had, 6 o'clock seems reasonable, at least for the current board. And the future board can amend it. If someone new comes onto the board, we can amend it at that time. This is just a general recommendation to keep everything 6 o'clock, to make it very easy. And assuming that everybody here has the capabilities and the ability to come, I think 6 o'clock is still a warranted time.
Mr. Hartke.
My understanding is that the Democratic caucus wanted 7, the Republican caucus wanted 6, and we kind of went with 6:30 to split the difference so we could all get along and be bipartisan. That was my understanding. I could be wrong. I'm voting for 6:30.
Mr. Kurtz.
Deb, what's the impact on any changes for a half hour or an hour on the staff and on the dollars? Can you give me any kind of heads up on how that would work?
Well, reasonably, I mean, your meetings are the length that they are. Obviously, I'm sure staff would prefer to go home a half hour earlier on all the nights of meetings than a half hour later, but that's a convenience factor. However, there are some staff members who live far enough away that it's not worth it to go home between 4:30 and 6 or 4:30 and 6:30, because basically they spend an entire hour going home and coming back. So for those people, this means we may need to do more in terms of flexing schedules, particularly for the IT staff, which means they are less available between 8 and 4:30, which is when the real demand on their time is from the rest of the county departments and offices. So that's, you know, basically one impact. There's not a cost impact. It's more of a convenience and scheduling impact. And there are a lot of staff who support your meetings. I mean, there are department heads, there are officials, there are the staff at this meeting, there are staff that you don't see, so it does have an impact.
Mr. Harper.
I know we have 2 amendments on the floor, but I really have a novel idea. Leave it the damn same way it is. I agree with Mr. Carter. 6 o'clock for Cal, 7 o'clock for regular board meeting.
I will point out that that's an option by voting no on both amendments. Mr. McGuire?
I also, you know, trying to find what to do for that time. I'd rather start at 6 o'clock, because if the meetings do run longer, and we're here till 12 o'clock, we haven't had that happen a lot since I've been here, but
we do have more time to actually do business if we're here and we start earlier.
All right, I'm going to call a vote on the Second Amendment, which would set essentially all our meeting times at 6 PM. So if you would like that, vote aye, and if you would like to talk about the other amendment, vote nay, and we'll move on to that. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. No. I'm going to call for a division. So all those in favor, raise your hands. 6 PM for all meetings. That's 12, so okay, that passes. I don't even need to call for the nays. I guess that means that the Second Amendment, or the First Amendment, is kind of moot. Got changed. So now what now what I'd like to discuss or vote on, if there's no discussion, is essentially passing a calendar with all of our meetings being at 6 PM. Except for highway. So is there any further discussion on that before we go to the amended calendar? I don't see a call for another vote on the amendment that's been amended, if everybody agrees, unless anybody has a concern. Did anybody have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the calendar as amended, say aye. Aye. Those opposed to the calendar as amended, say nay. I'm going to call for division again. Okay. Those in favor of the calendar as amended, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Again, that passes. That's for and I will point out that is for the calendar starting in December. So we expect you all to be here at 7 PM next week on Thursday. That is, does the calendar come back to the full board for approval? Okay.
And the calendar's for the calendar year, not fiscal year, so you did not change December.
We did not change December. Okay, that's a good point. Okay, so that passed. So things for consent. I have only A, 4, and 5. Does that agree with you, Deb? Everything else will be talked about individually. Okay, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Mr. James.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kurtz. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. We are adjourned.